Namaste. This is David Hawthorne at astroview.com. Today is the 13th of May 2015. Here's the Vedic astrology chart for the time the Amtrak train number 188 left Washington, D.C. on May 12th, about 7:08 p.m. This is the train that crashed last night. I think about 6 people were killed in that train crash, and dozens of other people are in the hospital. So, of course, our hearts and prayers go out with those families. But this is another illustration of why you can look at any horoscope at any time of the day. So if you're going to get on a major transportation, for example, you might want to take a look, because in this case, in the first house, we have the 7th sign of the zodiac ascending, and this is Libra rising sign. Now the ascendant degree is 16 degrees. Now these degrees are not arbitrary. There are 30 degrees possible. So the degrees are very specific to the exact time of some event. In this case, we're using the time of departure from Washington, D.C. So we see that this degree is known as most effective point, and it is applicable in every single house. Any planet close to 16 degrees will have an impact. And if it's a favorable planet, it will give something positive. And if it is a functional malefic planet, it will cause some adverse effect. And the orb is within 5 degrees. So in this case, it would be any planet between 11 degrees and 21 degrees would have an impact. Now we know that Rahu and Ketu, this is the northern node of the moon, Rahu. This is the southern node of the moon, Ketu. Now these are mathematical ecliptic points in the zodiac. They can and do cause the eclipse of the sun and the moon every year since the beginning of time. So we always want to watch their position when you're looking at some specific event or birth chart or horoscope. Anytime they're close to the rising sign degree, they technically afflict the houses they occupy and the houses they aspect. So Rahu and Ketu throw an aspect 5 houses away, 7 houses away, and 9 houses away. So this Ketu also afflicts 5 houses away, 7 houses away, and 9 houses away. So they have the potential to cause some eclipse. So this is the second house where Ketu influences. This is the house of continuation of family life. Rahu has influence in the 4th house, which is transportation and property. Ketu has an impact, and Rahu has an impact in the 6th house, which is injuries. Rahu has an impact in this 8th house, which is accidents and death-like experiences. And Ketu has an influence in this house, which is the house of karma and the field of action and professional life. And both Rahu and Ketu have an impact in the 12th house of hospitalization and end of life. We also see that Ketu is within 5 degrees of Jupiter, but it undermines the strength of Jupiter because of the influence in that house. Any planet sitting in a house under the influence of Rahu and Ketu becomes weak and lacks the power to protect its own significations. And Jupiter rules his 3rd house of self-initiatives. This also undermines the strength of Moon, because Moon rules his 10th house. So Moon, which is the public, becomes weak. Now, in a horoscope, there are 12 houses. This is the first house, second, all the way around to the 12th house. Of these houses, 9 are favorable houses. Those are the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, 7th, 9th, 10th, and 11th. Those are favorable houses. Planets in those houses are considered well placed. But there are 3 houses that are not favorable for any horoscope. It's the 6th house, the 8th house, and the 12th house. Planets going into those houses become weak. And planets ruling those houses, in some cases, become functional malefic planets and cause adverse effects. So for the Libra rising sign, the 6th house does not contain a Multricone sign, so the 6th ruler is not causing trouble. The 8th house does not contain a Multricone sign, so the 8th ruler does not cause trouble. But the 12th house contains the Multricone sign Virgo for Mercury. So for the Libra rising sign, Mercury becomes the most malefic planet. And we see that Mercury is placed here in the 8th house of death and accidents. We also see that Mercury is very close to the rising sign degree. So technically it's afflicting the 8th house of death and accidents, and it afflicts the 2nd house of continuation of life, because it throws an aspect opposite where it sits. We also see that Mercury's influence in the 2nd house undermines the strength of Saturn, and Saturn is known as Ayush Karaka, significator for longevity. And Saturn rules the moon. Moon's in Aquarius, ruled by Saturn. Moon is the public. Mars rules relationships, and it's the landlord for the sun, so the dispositor for the sun. Some people may look at the chart and say, oh, sun is in its exaltation sign of Aries, which is favorable. But the truth is, sun is weak because it's past 25 degrees, it's an old age, and the landlord Mars is in the 8th house of death, in a Dustan Bhava, inauspicious house. So Mars becomes weak, that weakens the sun. Sun is the government, the leadership. So in essence, this is a very weak chart. Venus ruling the chart is considered very well placed. And this can be helpful. This is maybe why not everybody was injured. But Venus is the only planet in this chart that has some strength to it. Saturn is weak because it is in a house afflicted by Mercury, and it's in a house afflicted by Ketu. Moon is weak because the landlord Saturn is in a house that's afflicted. And Moon is weak because Ketu afflicts the sign of Cancer. Sun is weak because it's in old age degrees, and the landlord Mars is in the 8th house of death and accidents. Mercury ruling the 12th house of losses and hospitalization is weak because it's in the 8th house. And it's in a house that is afflicted both by Rahu and by itself. Doesn't matter that it is doing the affliction. This house is afflicted by both Rahu and itself. And Rahu at 15 degrees is also within a 5-degree orb of Mercury and afflicting Mercury. Mercury's communications as well. An electrical engineering type of thing. And Jupiter is weak because it's in a house under the affliction of Ketu. So there's not much protection in this chart. And this is the Vimshottari Dasha sequence, timing of events. There's a Mahadasha, main period of time, and there's an Antradasha, sub-period of time. So we see that the main period was Rahu, the time of departure. Rahu runs from September 2014 until February 2018. Where's Rahu? In the house of losses, hospitalization, afflicting the 4th house of transportation, 6th house of injuries, 8th house of death and accidents, and afflicting Mercury, ruling the 12th house, hospitalization and losses. The operating planet is the subperiod ruler, which was an exalted sun, but weak in old age and ruled by Mars, which is in a house that's afflicted by both the 12th ruler, the most malefic planet, and by Rahu operating out of the 12th house. So no protection. So bottom line is, it's okay to take a look at the horoscope for the moment that your train leaves, the moment that your plane leaves, the moment that you depart for a trip. And if possible, you adjust. If you see that Rahu and Ketu are on the rising sign degree or very close to it, or the most malefic planet is on the rising sign degree, then you might want to take the next train, reschedule. Namaste.